Hi everyone, I just want to welcome you to another table talk. Today I want to talk about servos and the servos that I use and have used in my park jets over time, and discuss why I've arrived at the setup that I have now on most of my planes that I've built for probably over the last year. So first of all, I'm going to just put out a few caveats here. Most of the planes that I fly are sort of about this size, around the neighborhood of about 27, 28 inch wingspan. So if you're and their weight with a 2200 3-cell battery is between 20 and 22 ounces, or about 565 to 625 grams. So if you're flying a plane that's quite considerably bigger than that and considerably heavier than that, then the servo setup that I currently use is quite possibly not going to work for you. So I just kind of a bit of a warning there, so you don't rip out all your old servos and stick in 5-gram servos, because that's what I use, and then you strip servos, lose your plane, and generally have a bad day of aviating. Also, I sort of look at park jets as fitting into the sort of sport aerobatic realm of RC flying, which they have their own sort of unique niche. But when I first started flying, I had great big whack and throws and tons of expo. I actually was setting up my plane like it was a 3D plane, not sort of a sport aerobatic plane. So I was using big heavy, or the heavy Metal Gear servos. And then a few years ago I changed my whole philosophy on flying. It's actually coming up about 3 years ago now. So I started focusing on flying my planes in a more scale manner, so I watched lots of videos of the real planes flying, and then I tried to, at the field, I tried to emulate or mimic pitch rates, roll rates, turn rates, that sort of stuff, which forced me to bring, in order to fly smooth and precisely, I really needed to bring my throws down considerably. And I also started working towards reducing my expo quite a bit. So now I fly with about 15% expo in my pitch and roll, and about 20% in the yaw. So if you set your planes up a lot more differently than that, because you like to fly more aggressively, or you fly differently than how I do, again, these servos may not work for you. So RC Powers has long recommended using Metal Gear servos, and that's fine. They're good, they're strong, reliable. I mean, most of them are. The trouble with them is that even though these two are labeled as 9-gram servos, there's a 4-gram difference. This is the Metal Gear servo. It weighs about 15 grams on my scale with the servo arm on it, and this weighs about 11 grams. So initially when I was building, I was a card-carrying member of Overbuilders Anonymous. I used to build my planes way too heavy, which meant I had to fly them far too fast because the wing loading was high. They didn't fly well. My skills were bad, and I did a lot of crashing. And because my planes were heavy, they rarely survived the crash in any sort of repairable state. So as my flying developed, I started using 6 of these Metal Gear servos on a plane. So 15 grams per servo, that ends up here, I got 90 grams, like 3 ounces, just in servos. So anyway, as I turned a corner to try and start lightening up my plane. So that's sort of how I kept going to where I am now. Now, one place, if you're this is an NTM prop dive 2836 2700 kV motor. It's kind of like a big V8 of park jet motors, and there are ones now that are like 3000 kV and higher that a lot of guys are using on 3S and 4S. On 3S, this kicks off about 42 ounces of thrust, and then on 4S, I've tested it at close to 70 ounces of thrust with a 6x4 APC style prop. Now I know from experience, I built a plane a long time ago, and I just used 2 9-gram nylon gear servos, and then just for giggles and grins, it was a fairly small plane. I thought, oh, why not overpower the living daylights out of it? So I dropped one of these bad boys in there, and even on 3-cell, what was happening is, I'd be smoking along on a high-speed pass, and I'd pull up to turn, and the plane would turn initially, and then it would level out. Like the servo, the nylon gear or servo, couldn't generate enough force to keep the control surface where I wanted it. So I found, luckily I didn't strip any servos, so I switched right away to metal gear servos for the elevons. So if you're building with a big heavy motor like this that cranks out tons and tons of thrust, I would suggest stick with the metal gear servo, just because it can generate quite a bit more torque than the nylon gear ones can. The other thing is your plane's going to be fairly heavy anyway, because this motor, I used to fly this motor with a 60 amp speed controller. So this motor and a 60 amp speed controller is about 3 ounces heavier than, you know, your standard 2212, 2200 kV, you know, sort of the park jet motor or the park jet workhorse motor with a 30 amp speed controller. So you're going to have a fairly heavy plane anyway. But you want to, and it's going to be flying fast, so you want to make sure you've got servos that aren't going to, you know, strip on you or give you, still allow you to have control of your airplane, especially on the elevons, because they're going to be in the prop thrust of this, a prop wash of that big beastie. So anyway, you know, for my other planes, I was still using metal gear servos on the elevons. And these I switched to using the 9-gram nylon gear servos for my ailerons and rudders. So that was a 16-gram weight saving right there. But my planes still were a little bit heavy. Now, you know, I was still trying to develop good light building techniques. And so then eventually I switched to six nylon, 9-gram nylon gear servos all the way around. And you know, that lightened it up quite a bit, and I built lots and lots of planes with that setup, with, you know, even with the 2200 kV 2212 motor, and you know, I had lots of fun, good thrust to weight ratio, and that worked out just fine. So anyway, you know, fast forward a little bit more, you know, I guess it's coming up on 2 years ago now, maybe. Anyway, I used to buy my Depron from RC Foam in Colorado in the U.S. and you know, they announced that they were no longer going to be able to get hobby grade style Depron. I guess probably because the company doesn't even make it anymore. You can still buy Depron from them, but it comes with a curvature in it. So I started building more of my planes entirely of model plane foam, and now I'm even building some quite a bit with Dollar Tree foam or Adams Ready board, you know, just for cost savings and also some other advantages. But what I was finding was every time I built a plane, because of the model plane foam, if you look at my video where I talked about putting reinforcement in a park jet, that piece of foam was a scrap of model plane foam, and it's quite a bit more flexible, I find, than Depron. So in a standard all model plane foam build, I found I needed about 0.7 of an ounce, or about 20 grams, I guess, of extra reinforcement in the elevons, vertical stabilizers, and quite often across the back plate to prevent torsional twist. So then so now I've gained 0.7 of an ounce when I've worked really hard to keep my planes light. So I started looking around, and then I decided, well, I'll take a chance and experiment. So I'm still using 9-gram nylon gear servos for my elevons, which again weigh 11 grams. So I started playing around with 5-gram servos for my ailerons and rudders. These weigh 6 grams, so I was able to drop almost exactly that added weight that I had for reinforcement, because now I saved myself another 20 grams by using 4 of these for my ailerons and rudders, and again still 2 of the 9-gram nylon gear servos. And I don't think in any of my planes I'll probably ever get to the point where I might trust a 5-gram servo, because this can only generate about 2/3 of the force that this one can. So but these are working. I've been using these now in almost all my planes now for about a year, and they've been working just awesome. Now these are all of these servos here. I get these from RC Timer. I might have mentioned that already in the video. They're inexpensive and they've worked really, really well. I've also experimented a little bit with the HXT 500 ones from Hobby King, and I don't, either I got a bad batch of servos, they just don't seem to hold up as well, and they get noisy and chattery very early. Touch wood, I haven't had any of these, you know, and I've got some planes with 100, you know, well over 100 flights on them, and I haven't had any problems with these little 5-gram servos. So a couple of things that you need to be aware of. Obviously, you can see just side by side the arm on the 5-gram servo is quite a bit shorter. Now, another thing that I like to do, and this is a 9-gram servo that I've recycled out of a plane, is I like to use these little servo connectors. So I can't quite put my push rod right in the hole right closest to the servo, but I try and put it as close as I possibly can, because that, you know, that helps the servo out, allows it to generate a little bit better force. And what it also does is, I've found, is it helps with resolution, where it helps, you know, with small stick movements, is that the movement tends to be a lot smoother than if it's, you know, if I put the attachment way out here. And like I said before, is I don't fly with a whole lot of control surface movement, so this allows me to have good feel and resolution by having the push rod close to the actual servo. So these are brand new. I just took these out of the packaging for this video, so that's why they have the full length arm on them. The other challenge is, you'll notice there's a big difference in the wire. These are on the 9-gram ones, they're about 10 inches long, and on this 5-gram one they're about 6 inches long. So you have to be sort of a little bit more careful where you place your servo, otherwise you end up adding, you know, you have to add servo extensions with this, which then add weight back to your plane, you know, if you're looking at really keeping it light. The other thing that I like to do, and I would suggest this Metal Gear servo, for some reason the outside of it almost feels like it's a little bit oily, and so what I would suggest you do is scuff the outside up a little bit with you know, just with some sandpaper, just to help any tape or glue that you put on it adhere a little bit better. And then I also, like I said, these are brand new out of the package, so I haven't taken the labels off of them, but I will take the labels off of these. And then what I like to do, and you want to probably do this especially with the 5-gram servo, because the little tiny screws that hold this bottom cap on are really, really small. And what I've had sometimes is that, you know, I'm dry fitting it in the plane and I pull it out and the bottom pops off. So what I do is that I just take a little strip of this, you know, this is the 3M Scotch brand tough transparent duct tape. It's the same stuff I make my hinges out of. I cut a little strip and then I sort of wrap it, you know, top and wrap it around the bottom, and then that holds the top and the bottom of the servo one, and then, you know, trim it as you need. So that helps hold the servo together. And the other thing that it does is I like to use hot glue when I put my servos in. I just find it's easier to get them in and out than using, say, epoxy or foam cure or other types of glue. And when you pull it out, you can just peel the tape off, and then all your glue should come off, so you can recycle it into another plane without having to scrape the living daylights out of your servo. So yeah, so that's what I use. I'll show you. Hopefully you can see. So again, I put a little bit of light on the subject here. You can see on this is a 5-gram servo I've got on my rudders here. So I wasn't able to get the little connector terribly close, but it's got plenty of travel for how I like to fly. And again, on the bottom here, hopefully you can see I've got a 5-gram servo here for my aileron and the 9-gram servo here for my elevon, and those work out really, really well. So anyway, like I said, it's if you're looking for ways to lighten up your plane, you know, grams add up to ounces kind of thing. You know, maybe experiment and give some 5-gram servos a try on maybe your ailerons and your rudder, and see how you make out. Like I said, I've had really, really good luck with them now for over a year. and because I sort of build in, you know, the range that I build in and the size that I build in, and with the power setups, you know, probably the most powerful power setup that I use is, you know, 35 or 36 ounces of thrust. So these 9-gram servos, nylon gear servos, hold up really well for the elevons, and these have been working really well for me. The 5-gram for the ailerons and rudders. These, you know, like anything, as soon as you go smaller, they're more expensive. These are about $3 each, and these are about $2 each. So again, that might depend on your budget. What I would do is, what I would experiment with, if you want to see how much difference, you know, if you're setting your servos up now so that your control horn is, you know, quite far out on the end here, is just do a little experiment, and you know, you start off with it, you know, way out at the end there, and just move the stick really slowly, and you know, see what happens. What I found is happening is when I would move the stick really slowly, is that I could see just subtle jerkiness in the control surface, and then if you move the push rod close to the servo, it's not going to travel as far, but when you make those small movements, for me it just seems much smoother, so less jerkiness. Now again, if you build bigger and heavier park jets than what I do, or you like to fly yours differently than mine, you know, maybe these servos, the servo setup wouldn't work for you, but if you're looking for ways to lighten things up, you know, I would suggest maybe giving it a try. So anyway, like I said, these are all RC Timer servos. I've been using them for years. I've had tons and tons of luck. I'll put good luck with them. I'll put links to them down below. And I also, quite a long time ago, when I first started thinking about using these 9-gram servos for my planes, I wrote an article on an old blog that I used to share with my NAMC partners, Stefan and Dave. So if I can find the link to that, I'll put that down below, as well as links to these servos if you want to give it a try. So if you're, you know, if you've experimented or whatever, or you have another setup that works really well for you, you know, please don't hesitate to leave comments down below. Like I said, for the way that I like to fly and the size and weight of my park jets, 4 5-gram servos for ailerons and rudders, 1 9-gram nylon gear servo for my elevons is the setup that I have really come to like. It helps me keep my planes light, but I still have you know, very good precise control over them. So there we have it, folks. Thanks very much for joining me on this table talk. It's just after Christmas, so I hope for those who celebrate it, you had a great Christmas. I know that I did. I was spoiled rotten by Santa, so that was a very good Christmas this year. So thanks for watching. Blue skies, calm winds to everyone. Park jet noise, the other sound of freedom. Take care.